If you've been around the UFO field for the past year, you've heard a phrase that is gaining popularity to explain lack of evidence. That phrase? Exempt from FOIA. From mainstream media journalists to former military pilots, it's now been said many times that information about the reported secret UFO study known as AATIP, or info on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, or UFOs, or whatever you want to call them, it's all untouchable in the eyes of the Freedom of Information Act, or the FOIA. But is any of that even true? And what does it mean when something is FOIA exempt? Stay tuned. You're about to take a quick journey inside the Black Vault with a quick blast. That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and taking a short journey with me inside the Black Vault. In this particular quick blast, I'm going to be talking about the phrase that we've heard a little bit more about in the last couple of weeks. It started about a year ago, and that is exempt from FOIA. Of course, I made a small presentation to help visualize exactly what all of this means. So it's first to lay some groundwork. Very quick, very easy, very simple. What is the Freedom of Information Act? We should really understand what the heck it is if we're going to be talking about the fact that certain things don't apply to it. Well, in short, it was passed on July 4th, 1966. It's gone through many revisions since then. It was fully enacted on July 4th, 1967, a year after it passed. And here's the nutshell, easy way to explain the FOIA. In short, any federal or military agency can accept a request from you, me, or anyone on the planet. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen, and you can request information under the Freedom of Information Act. What does that mean? Well, the agency reviews it and sends it to you. But there's a pretty big catch in there. They don't always send it to you because there's a list of 9 exemptions. That's the catch. Now, before I get into those exemptions, I want to talk a little bit about what does the FOIA apply to. Now, the FOIA applies to all federal regulatory agencies, cabinets, military departments, offices, commissions, government-controlled corporations, the executive office of the president, and other organizations within the executive branch of the federal government. In other words, it's pretty much anything on a federal level, with a few exceptions. The FOIA does not apply to the president or White House records themselves. That's covered by the Presidential Records Act. That's something totally different. That's when that goes to a presidential library. So they're off limits, at least while they're in office. Congress or members of Congress, they're all completely off limits. Can't do a FOIA on Pelosi or anyone else. You gotta wait for certain things to be made public there. All federal courts and federal judiciary documents, all off limits to the FOIA. Everything else, however, is fair game. Now, those FOIA exemptions that I talked about, well, there are 9 of them. Those are 9 legal exemptions that if information that you requested fits into that, they won't give it to you. Here they all are. I highlighted the ones that I see most often, but of course it depends on what you're actually requesting, which defines what you see most often. Exemption 1, information that's classified to protect national security. Number 2, information related solely to the internal personnel rules and practices of an agency. The third, information that is prohibited from disclosure by another federal law. Number 4, trade secrets or commercial or financial information that's confidential or privileged. The 5th, privileged communications within or between agencies. The 6th, information that, if disclosed, would invade another individual's personal privacy. Number 7, information compiled for law enforcement purposes. Number 8, information that concerns the supervision of financial institutions. And number 9, geological information on wells. Those are the 9 exemptions. Anything that you request from any of those applicable federal agencies or military branches, if it fits into one of these 9, they're going to redact it or deny you fully. Now, how the heck did this UFO story that we know as AATIP, often touted as the Pentagon's secret UFO study, how did the rumor start that it is just 100% FOIA exempt? In my opinion, it all started in June of 2018. Mr. George Knapp, investigative journalist from KLAS-TV, published this article. It was an I-Team exclusive. Nevada senator fought to save secret UFO program. Within it, It was the 2009 Harry Reid letter, which I'll show you in a second. Within the story and within the video, it said the letter is not classified, but a footnote says it is exempt from disclosure under FOIA because of what it contains. It's creating an aura about something that isn't necessarily true. Now, is this semantics? Not at all. It's incredibly important because that aura of all of this being highly secretive and highly classified is just downright wrong. And I don't say that because I disagree or have a personal vendetta against anybody involved in this story, but rather I'll prove it to you with the actual official evidence to show that this is not a highly classified, completely exempt, untouchable program. What was said to be exempt from FOIA, that's actually not true. The letter itself didn't have that at all. It was actually within the attachment to the letter. Now, is that playing semantics? No, not on a legal sense. Attachments are largely and primarily considered something different than the letter that they are attached to. Oftentimes, a letter is only classified because the attachment is classified. For all my FOIA people out there, if you use the FOIA long enough, you'll sometimes see verbiage that says classified secret unless attachments are removed, because the attachment is secret, not the letter. That language only appeared on the attachment itself. I'll get to that attachment in a second. But it says this document contains information exempt from mandatory disclosure under the FOIA. Exemptions 1 and 5 apply. Well, we know what 1 and 5 are. 1 being that classified, 5 being privileged communications. This was the attachment and where that language appeared. Now, why would it appear here? Well, the letter, in short, said that Harry Reid, Senator Harry Reid, wanted to request special access program status to AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. He submitted those that would have access to the program and a list of contracted personnel. That's actually very important, the contracted personnel. We know this to be BASS, or a Bigelow Aerospace subsidiary. Why this is important plays into this language. DoD Regulation 5200.1-R says that anything that is sent outside the Department of Defense that's considered for official use only, which is not a classification, but rather it is simply a designation. So Harry Reid's letter would be for official use only. It wasn't supposed to be sent to the public. But because they were going to go ahead and send it to Bigelow Aerospace, or BASS, it says in that regulation, for official use documents and material transmitted outside the DoD, it must bear an expanded marking on the face of the document so that non-DoD holders understand the status of the information. A statement similar to this one should be used. This document contains information exempt from mandatory disclosure under the FOIA. Exemptions blank apply. Blank meaning that person that wrote the document or sending out the document, they input those FOIA exemptions, either 1 through 9 or all of the above or whatever. Now, this is why it's a big deal. Because Mr. Luis Elizondo, in July of 2018, said in a MUFON keynote address, much of AATIP information remains FOIA exempt. FOIA exempt. What do you mean? Everything's FOIA-able. No, it's not. Exceptions 1 and 5. He also goes on to say, people say, well, if AATIP existed, I should be able to FOIA it. Not necessarily. Some of the documents that were released as a result, if you take a look at a recent letter that supposedly came from Senator Reid, on the very last page at the very bottom, you're going to see a really interesting little word. Words, actually. It says FOIA exempt. That's right. We use that sometimes. So he's saying that that letter said FOIA exempt. Here's the problem. No, it didn't. Yes, he was right about the exemptions 1 and 5, but it was not the letter, rather it was the attachment, and we can easily explain why that language was there. It was commonplace, not anything special. But this has caught on. Not only did Mr. Elizondo tout that, and to be blatantly honest with you, this is not a shot at him at all, but I will say he should have known better. He should know that anything that got sent out of the DoD should have that language. It was nothing special for the AATIP or any AATIP-related document. Now, Commander David Fravor just recently appeared in October on the Joe Rogan show, Joe Rogan Experience podcast. In the course of conversation, he says I think it's like 13 people that were part of AATIP, and they were FOIA exempt. So now we're taking it a step farther. We're not only saying that the information was there, but the entire staff. I'm not sure how he got 13 people. I'm interested in that. We'll follow up. But that being said, that they were all FOIA exempt, that everything that they did was FOIA exempt. And going back to what Mr. Elizondo said with the fact that if AATIP existed, you should be able to FOIA it, and then he says not necessarily. Actually, it's that is not true. You can FOIA it, however, it may be exempted through one of those 9 exemptions, but it has to be cited. B1 is the only one that actually would apply. Anything else from 2 to 9, and I'll let you guys go back to that slide and analyze each one, it would not apply. B1, I could buy that. The problem is that you can debunk that theory. We'll use Senator Harry Reid to do just that. In a March 21st, 2018 interview with New York Magazine, Harry Reid said in answer to a question about the information related to AATIP, most all of it, 80% at least, is public. You know something? The press has never even looked at it. Not once. That's where we are. I wanted it public. It was made public, and you guys have not even looked at it. 80%. That's not a highly classified special access program that only 13 people know about. That is something that is highly available. Now, let's say he exaggerated. Spoiler alert. Politicians often do that. So let's just say it was half the information. That is still not a highly classified special access program. Here's some more damning evidence to show why it would not just have a blanket denial for national security. These are, and I'll take myself away here so you can see it. These are the 38 reports generated under AATIP or AATIP. These were requested by Senator John McCain, I should say, and the Defense Intelligence Agency sent back to him the list of 38 reports that were created under the AATIP contract, also known as AATIP. I'm still working on whether or not that they are the same or different. There are differing explanations from those who are involved in both programs, so go figure on that one. But that being said, according to Senator McCain, he sought after AATIP-related documents, and these were created under AATIP, but DIA felt that they were responsive. Now, here's something that you can see, and that is the classification of each and every last one. With the exception of one, they are all unclassified. Now, they are designated for official use only. That is fairly standard, but they are all unclassified. The documents that have leaked out, given the fact that they are true and real, all list the AATIP program within the document itself, if that was highly classified, just the existence of that program. The document itself would actually require a classification stamp of, let's say, top secret, if this was all heavily classified. The way classification works is that you have to classify a document at the highest level of the information that it contains. For example, you can have a 1,000-page document and only a single paragraph is considered top secret. What do you think that document is going to be considered? Top secret. Once that one paragraph is redacted, then it can be unclassified or declassified, I should say, and released to the public. So this shows you as well that although it has a for official use designation, every piece, with the exception of one, everything else, though, available to the public. Now, all of this has caught on, from Mr. Elizondo to Commander Fravor, all of those touting the FOIA exempt lines. Now that we know that it's not true, it's caught on. These are just a couple of tweets here that I've quickly found where it is catching on, that people just think, well, you're never going to touch anything because it's all FOIA exempt. They reference Commander Fravor, they reference Mr. Luis Elizondo, because all of that has an effect. It has an effect when you start explaining certain things a certain way. Whether or not it's accurate or not, people start to believe it. So that makes investigations much harder for people like me. When you're trying to fact check or when you're trying to give out information to the public, they just think you're a government shill, and they think that you're never going to get anything anyway because it's all FOIA exempt. Well, the law says otherwise, and information says otherwise. These are documents, just a couple examples. I can show you thousands that all have That exact or near exact FOIA exempt or exempt from mandatory disclosure or so on language on documents released under the Freedom of Information Act. Of course, there are going to be redactions if they fit in one of those 9 categories. But other than that, everything is FOIA-able. So don't listen otherwise. Not everything is what it seems. Now, I want to believe in this topic just as much as anyone else. And UFOs demand attention. They demand a heavier scrutiny, but with an emphasis on truth. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Black Vault aims to give you guys information that I can verify. There are other organizations out there now selling items to you saying, we can't verify what's in this, but here you go. Well, that doesn't really sound like they have an emphasis on truth. And so that is what I try and do for you guys. Some of this is dry. Some of it is boring. I get it. But we have to understand it to realize that sometimes we may be fed a line that isn't true. So, exempt from FOIA? Nah, it's not all untouchable. It may be exempt from release, but that is a completely different thing. And like I said, not everything is like it seems. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off. We'll see you next time.